Story today, the Justice Department opens a criminal investigation into the leak of Pentagon documents. According to the Department of Defense, aka the Pentagon, they say the documents were posted on several social media sites and, quote, appear to contain sensitive and highly classified material, close quote. They appear to detail information on things like the war in Ukraine and also suggest that the U.S. has been spying on some of its international allies like Korea and Israel. The Pentagon is now trying to figure out who might have been motivated to leak something like this and who did it.
CBS News' chief White House correspondent, who's been incredibly busy lately, Nancy Cordes. Let's talk about what the administration is saying about this leak and how it happened.
Well, they're not saying anything publicly, although the White House press secretary will probably be peppered with questions about it during the White House briefing a little bit later today. But behind the scenes, they acknowledge that this is a major challenge that they are dealing with, not just trying to figure out who leaked this information, why they leaked this information, how much there is, are they now aware of all of it, but also, of course, dealing with some of the fallout from these leaks. You mentioned the fact that friends and foes alike were spied on, and that's not entirely surprising. But now those countries know exactly what the U.S. was saying about them in some instances. There's been reporting, for example, that Ukraine has already changed some of its battle plans after some information was leaked online. Not that Ukraine would be surprised to find out that the U.S. was spying on their intentions, but obviously it makes things a little more challenging, makes things a little more uncomfortable. So a lot of work to be done both within the Pentagon and the various spy agencies to figure out how this happened and to contain the fallout.
Shifting gears to Asia, but also the topic of how civil wars seem to have never-ending legacies. Way back in 1949, the communists and the nationalists in China fought for control of that country. The communists now run mainland China, and the nationalists are in Taiwan, which is not quite a country of its own, but the U.S. is in the middle of the tension between mainland China, which considers Taiwan part of it, and what the U.S. would do if mainland China would to pick up where things left off back in 1949. What's happening?
Well, the U.S. is arguing that the Taiwanese president's visit here to the U.S. last week, which wasn't even billed as an official visit, but more as a transit. She didn't stop here in Washington, D.C. She met with the House Speaker and a bipartisan group of leaders in California. The U.S. is urging China not to use that visit or transit as a pretext for any new threats against Taiwan, any heightened tensions. The cat is obviously out of the bag because that's already taking place. In fact, if anything, China is reacting more swiftly and more intensely than it did last year when House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the Taiwanese president in Taiwan. The White House is arguing that this was a routine visit, that it's nothing that China should get upset about, but obviously, this is something that was not entirely unexpected given the way that China has reacted in the past anytime it feels that that the bonds between Taiwan and the U.S. or any other country are strengthening.
And Nancy, very quickly, what is the White House saying on these conflicting measures on the lack of access to widely used abortion medication?
Right. Well, they're obviously staunchly opposed to the ruling by a Texas judge that said that this abortion drug, mifepristone, was wrongly approved by the FDA 23 years ago, and that the FDA basically needs to go back to the drawing board. They don't agree with that ruling. They say that it is political in nature. The Department of Justice is filing a stay to try to prevent that injunction from going into place. This is all something that could end up at the U.S. Supreme Court. But beyond that, there's not that much that the White House can do. Right now, mifepristone is still available for women in the states where abortion is legal, and even in states where abortion is restricted. Women can continue to get the drug from overseas marketers, but it's really now an open question about what could happen in the years to come.
Boy, Nancy, leaked Pentagon documents, international relations, rising tensions, and also domestic politics. You demonstrate why the White House correspondent job is probably the hardest in journalism, but you make it look easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony.